What's up guys, it's Frogfaduck. We all love taking photos on our ancient smartphones, but don't you wish that this could be a normal camera? Well, Samsung has you covered with the Samsung Galaxy Camera 2. There we go. Now, I know what you guys may be thinking, Frogfaduck, this just looks like a generic Samsung point-and-shoot camera. Well, you see, the exciting part comes when you turn this thing around. Well, there's nothing here so far, but the actual exciting bit happens when you turn this thing on. Okay, so now you guys may be thinking, oh, this is just some generic Samsung point-and-shoot camera, but this time it just has a touchscreen. It has the crappy old TouchWiz interface from 2014. The most exciting bit comes from when I press this button. Yeah, it's pretty much just running Android. And I mean, as soon as you turn around this way, yeah, it pretty much just looks like a generic Samsung smartphone from the time, except with bezels you pretty much would not see on a phone from that time. If we go to About Device, you can see that this thing runs Android 4.3 on it. So yeah, it's pretty much an Android phone, except it's not a phone because it can't make calls. So it's an Android device that just so happens to be a point-and-shoot camera, which I think is a very interesting combo. Alright, this little segment was filmed well after everything else, but did you know that Android was originally developed as a camera operating system? So it's kind of interesting the fact that they put what originally was a camera operating system on a camera. And as a camera operating system, I mean, it's alright. I mean, you can kind of tailor it into whatever you want, so yeah. Because we think about how cameras are these days, just look at the new iPhone, look how big the cameras are on those. Wouldn't it make sense to just turn these things into just regular point-and-shoot cameras? Well, we'll find out in this video why it kinda sucks, but it also doesn't suck at the same time. It's weird. Also, the fact that it doesn't have the iconic clock there is kind of pissing me off. So we're gonna go to Apps and Widgets here, and we're gonna add in the ever so iconic Samsung weather clock widget. There we go. Now this thing feels like an Android device from 2014. So you guys may be thinking, well, okay, so what can I do with it? Well, pretty much anything you can do with a Samsung smartphone from this time period. You can go to the Play Store and you can install apps. So you can run games on your point-and-shoot camera. Because that's cool, I guess. So let's think about a situation where this could be useful. We can go into apps, we can go into Chrome, right? And then when you're in Chrome, you can search up, how do I take photo good? And then you press search, and then you get half the screen covered up telling you that your Chrome version's out of date, but there's pretty much nothing you can do about it. So you press X, and then you pretty much start looking up tutorials on how to take photos, because you bought a camera but you don't know how to take photos. And if you press that button, you can just go and take a photo. Like, how cool is that? And you can go back home and go back to Google and look up some more tutorials on how to take photos. Okay, let's just say that you're taking photos, but you're getting sick of taking photos, or there's nothing interesting to take photos of. You can go and search up Minecraft, and then realize that Minecraft is not here for some reason. Where is Minecraft? I don't think Minecraft supports this older version of Android. I mean, if you just get an APK file, you can pretty much just install it. So, very quickly using this, you'll come to the realization that most modern apps don't really support Android 4.3 anymore. And this camera does not support focusing on this camera, so that's funny. But yeah, pretty much all of the shenanigans you can get up to on something like a Galaxy S5, you can pretty much do on this thing as well. Look at that, the styles even match. These things came out in the same year, and wow, we're just a happy little Samsung family here, aren't we? So yeah, it runs Android, it runs it pretty well to be honest, but Samsung's TouchWiz skin back then was pretty nasty, so you don't really want to be using this for too long. You can even use your camera as an alarm clock, because, you know, it stands up by itself, so it's an alarm clock. It doesn't, wait, actually I think it does vibrate. Vibrate. Yeah. This has got a vibration motor in it, so you can use it as a proper alarm clock, I guess. And for your notifications, you can make it vibrate, which is kind of funny, to be honest. You've got pretty much other weird TouchWiz shenanigans, for example, the ever so terrible S voice.
I can't find a network connection. Please connect and try again.
Oh my god, that voice. Pretty much the precursor to Bixby, which is a thing that pretty much plagued Samsung smartphones for a while. Here's my old Galaxy S8 with the Bixby button, which you had to use some workaround to remap, but you know, now I've remapped it to some actual useful features. For example, this light here, which is fun. And also media controls. I kind of miss having an extra button that you could just remap for interesting things. It's neat stuff. But speaking of buttons, this thing's full of them. Well, at least for an Android smartphone. If we look up here, this is pretty much your replacement for the lock switch. So there's that, I guess. You can put a password on your camera. Actually, you know what? That's one advantage. You can put a passcode and a lock screen on here, so nobody can access the photos you take, or even just use your camera in general. So that's actually good stuff. Of course, up here you have your generic DSLR stuff. You have the button to actually take your photos, and the little rocker here to actually zoom in and out of your photos. Interesting thing about the zoom slider here is that when you're in normal Android mode, this is how you control the volume. You guys may also be wondering, well, what does this button do? And if we press it, it just shoots up a little flash module, which is actually kind of neat. Though it is very strangely flimsy, and when you try and shove it back in, it feels like you're gonna break it very easily. Yeah. You can see, when you're like, it's not really a good way to push it in unless you kind of go at an angle, which you can miss, or you can miss that way and bend it in weird shapes. It's strange, I don't know why they did that. But yeah, I mean, it works, I guess. It does the trick. And I haven't tried the flash yet, so we'll try in a bit. There's actually some more interesting stuff on this camera, so if we turn it around, here is the charging port, so you can actually plug it in and charge it. That's the headphone jack, I believe, which you don't see on modern smartphones. Try watching a tech video about an old product where someone doesn't say that in it. Here we have a micro HDMI port. Come on. Yeah, here we have a micro HDMI port, which these things are absolutely terrible. But on the exact same piece, there's also the slot for the battery. I'm not going to take this out right now because, well, the phone's on. I'll insert a clip of me doing it. On the bottom here, here's your little old tripod mount, so you can actually mount this thing onto a tripod and take like videos or long exposure shots. And if we look here on the front, of course you have the main attraction, which is the 21x optical zoom lens, which pretty much is the main selling point compared to something like a traditional smartphone from the time. Actual, real, proper zoom on a, well, it's not a smartphone, but it's an Android device, because it can't make calls. So now I think it's a good time to really start focusing on the camera. You can see when you activate the camera here, the lens pops out. This thing is pretty dirty. I kind of bought it like this and it's really hard to get in here and clean it. The actual lens cover here has a little bit of trouble getting coming out, and you can see as well if I close the back. It's starting to fail a little bit, so that's a little bit concerning. You can see when it's like that, it shows up in shots. Fantastic, thanks guys. Yep, can I go back? Sometimes regular buttons are kind of nice on a device like this because you really cannot go fast on this. I'm spoiling a bit, but yeah, you can kind of tell it's a bit jank. So yeah, that's a bit of a lens cover. And there we go, now it's pretty much been cleared away. As I mentioned before, one of the best features about this is the 21x optical zoom, and yeah, it zooms pretty fast, so you just use this thing. You can sort of hear though, that this thing is struggling a little bit. The previous owner, well, kind of left it in pretty bad condition, and there's so much gunk that's been built up in here. And if we look at the screen, you may notice that little dot. You know what that dot is? That's permanent damage to the lens that I can't get rid of. You can see it come in and out as the camera zooms in. And yeah, that's not really something I can fix. The previous owner forgot to delete their photos. Now, while I won't be showing anything for privacy reasons, I did use it to confirm that that black spot wasn't there when the phone was sold to me, so this thing clearly got damaged in shipping and I was able to get some money back for that, which is always good. But pretty much there's lots of fragile moving parts on here, and you can already see just from one round of shipping it's just starting to fail, and yeah. We'll try the flash, why not? Also good to mention, there's no selfie cam on here, so you can't actually take smartphone selfies on this, which is strange, because 2014 was the year of the selfie, don't you guys remember? I have the flash out, and we're gonna try it, so 3, 2, 1. Okay, the flash didn't work. 3, 2, 1. I mean, the flash is pretty bright, but honestly, this is pretty much where the Android side of this thing absolutely shines. When actually viewing the photos, it's got a really nice screen on it for the time. I think the colors are still the sickly, oversaturated colors from early Samsung phones of the day, but you can see here, it's actually fairly detailed. I'll put these photos on the screen so you can see it. We need some subjects to photograph, so one of the subjects we're going to put here is just this old Ricoh film camera that I got for $5 off of a market. I would absolutely love to do a head-to-head comparison between this and, well, this, and you can actually kind of see the styling is a little bit similar. It's not exact, but I do like this kind of chrome, we'll get to that in a bit, trim here with this leather body wrapped around. It's actually kind of nice. It is actually kind of reminiscent of some traditional style cameras, which is kind of cool to be honest. But yeah, maybe one day this thing will get a video of its own. Film's expensive, and I haven't really had any experience using a film camera, so yeah. So let's plonk this thing down here and, you know, let's take some photos of it using this thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back here and I'm going to actually zoom in to get kind of a telephoto looking shot here. So one of the things you'll immediately be able to tell looking at these photos is, one, this is completely overexposed. This is pretty good lighting here, as you can see from my smartphone right now doing a better attempt. And also another problem here is the processing on these photos genuinely does make it look like it actually really did come from a Galaxy S5. Except you just have better zoom, and yeah, honestly, it's kind of nothing that special. The photos on here don't really look that good sometimes, especially in these lighting conditions. I do have some other examples I took about a month ago, and you can see when you're outside under perfect lighting conditions, you can get some very good results, but also then there's lens damage, and yeah. And I mean, the zoom, this is just the one advantage that even my Pixel 7 can kind of compete with, but it truly can't replicate. Just the fact that you've got this optical zoom really does open things up to some new opportunities that you can't really do with a smartphone. But at the same time, just get a point and shoot. Like, you don't really need it to run Android. I mean, there's a couple of advantages. For example, one of my absolute favorite advantages of using this is just the tap to focus. You can just focus on a particular point just by tapping on it, just like your smartphone, which is very intuitive. I absolutely love this, and I think professional cameras, okay, they probably do, but at least the ones I've used, they don't have this, so this is just an absolutely fantastic feature, and yeah, it really does help make this thing actually kind of nice to take photos with. And the fact you got the physical button on here means you really can treat this like a normal camera, which is pretty cool to be honest. Alright, so here I have an absolutely scientific camera test with a wide range of colors. So I just got a bunch of colorful objects that we'll take a photo of. Unfortunately, one of the assets I wanted to take a photo of was missing, so that kind of sucks. So we're just gonna roll with that, it's red anyway, so yeah. We'll take a photo of this with my phone here, a Pixel 7 Pro, and compare it to this thing and see which one looks better. But of course, since I'm completely unfair, let's compare these photos to this thing right here. This right here is my main DSLR of choice. This is the Nikon D3400, and yeah, this thing has been an absolutely fantastic camera. The only problem with it is that I got this lens for really cheap because the autofocus has stopped working, so I have to manually focus every photo. You will be able to kind of see that some of the shots are slightly out of focus, which is really annoying. But yeah, I'll chuck that on screen to compare, and yeah. So I took these three cameras out about a month ago to capture some shots and even some video, and here are the results. we are. Focus. This thing cost me like $3 and it tastes like complete crap. Help me. So overall, while this thing is fairly nifty, I think these days it's not really much more than kind of just a novelty item. I mean, if you give this to someone with the right lighting and the right skill and the right patience, you can still get some fantastic shots out of here. And especially just having the zoom in general is just kind of nice. Also, the method to take photos and then view them just like a smartphone may be fairly familiar to someone starting out. So if you have like a kid or something who has a smartphone, which in and of itself is concerning, something like this would be alright. I mean, there's better options out there nowadays. And like, since it's powered by Android, you can pretty much just Bluetooth or just share it to pretty much just whatever app can still run on Android 4.3 from like 2014. No, it's from 2013. They loaded this up with year-old software. I sure love having this thing run Android and watching it go completely obsolete and out of date with the software. So yeah, at least the camera still works though. But yeah, these things are pretty much a novelty item at this point. Again, they've still got a use for them. Certainly more of a use than some older Android smartphones have. But even then, as a novelty item, I was extremely disappointed when I got this because the build quality of this is kind of terrible. I think also the number one thing I just absolutely despise about Samsung products from this period is, well, one, TouchWiz, which, guess what guys, your camera is powered by an outdated version of Android running a crappy Samsung skin that barely anyone liked. So you have that bit of obsolescence just thrown in there. And mind you, this never really got any software updates, so you're stuck on 4.3. I'm sure people have modded newer versions of Android on this, just, yeah, it's probably happened. But just in general, when you look at this camera from the photos, you think, oh, this is going to be a really nicely made metal camera with this beautiful soft leather surrounding. Or it's like when you look at a Galaxy S5, oh, look at this beautiful metal phone with this soft touch back. But then when you hold it in your hands, you realize it's all plastic. This is plastic. This is plastic. This is kind of a soft touch plastic that's made to look like leather. This is just plastic that's meant to look like metal. But I think the worst part truly is that they put real metal next to the fake metal, and it makes the fake metal look even worse. All of this is metal though. Again, really just contrasts just how different the real metal is compared to the crappy fake metal. And yeah, it's made of plastic, it's just crap, and once it gets more beaten up, because, you know, it's plastic, it will get beaten up, it just looks worse and worse. And it's really disappointing because I absolutely love the look of this camera. This is a very classy sort of throwback to how older cameras look. But then you look at the Galaxy S5 and you realize kind of the same thing. These sides are just plastic that's made to look like metal, and this here is probably the most disgusting material Samsung's ever used on their phones. It's this soft touch rubber back that is basically turning back into oil and is extraordinarily sticky. And yeah, all of that combined pretty much made me really regret buying this, but I mean, I have it. It's a cool novelty, but when you pick these things up, you realize what it truly is. It pretty much is just your bog standard Samsung smartphone with a zoom lens, and also can't make calls, so yeah. Samsung also made a DSLR that runs Android, which is pretty much the same as this, but with swappable lenses and everything. I could not imagine how much of a waste of money that one would be. But yeah, pretty much just wanted to kind of show off this weird oddity Samsung made. It's a very strange device and kind of an obsolete idea at this point. I mean, you still see some manufacturers kind of doing this, but yeah, pretty much nowadays of the way smartphone cameras are going. Oh, and mind you also, the experience of trying to use this as just like a regular phone kind of sucks, because where do you put your hand? Like, you hold this, sure, you've got, you know, this little massive hump to hold, which is kind of nice when you're trying to look at landscape content, but as soon as you go portrait, you gotta put your fingers around the massive lens like this, and very quickly it starts to become a bit of a mess. But, you know, it's not really what this thing was meant to be. It's a camera first and foremost. It just so happens to run Android. And because it runs Android, you can just do some wacky stuff with it, just like any other old smartphone. So if you're someone who just likes to tinker with this kind of stuff, I mean, this would also be cool as well. Go hack a newer version of Android on here. Go use an app that uses better processing than the default camera app. The sky's the limit with this thing, honestly. Go run Linux on it, like, honestly. So yeah, my name's Frogfaduck. You can say that however you want, I really don't care. New videos whenever I want. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching.